Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good evening everybody, my name is Madhvi Jha and I am from Delhi University Janki Devi Memorial College, Department of History. Today we will be speaking about the Russian Revolution of 1917. The Russian Revolution of 1917 is undoubtedly one of the most important events of the 20th century world history. It has two phases. First revolution in March, which led to the end of the Tsar's rule, and revolution in November, which installed the Bolshevik or communist government. This revolution had major international consequences. For centuries, Russia had been under autocratic and repressive Tsarist regime, which began to crumble in the middle of the World War I. While one can see the war as being the most immediate cause of the revolution, it cannot be seen as the only cause. Factors that led to the fall of Tsarism in Russia are deeply rooted in its history. It was a combination of various factors such as the agrarian question, workers' discontent, presence of revolutionary ideas, the impact of World War and the inadequacies of the Tsar himself that played a crucial role in creating a situation of crisis and led to the eventual downfall of the Romanov dynasty and the February Revolution in 1917. Until 1905, Russia was an absolute monarchy without a parliament or even a constitution. There was no central government except for the Tsar's residence and no laws other than his decrees. There were only two divisions in the society, the nobility and the peasantry, the majority of whom were serfs. Now we will talk about the socio-economic crisis in Russia which led to the revolution. The political repression in Russia under Tsar Nicholas I and the subsequent defeat in the Crimean War 1854–56 were followed by a period of enlightened rule under Tsar Alexander II. The early administrative measures of Alexander II paved the way for a reform and a complete reversal of his father's policies. The reform for which Alexander II will ever be remembered was the emancipation of serfs. The agrarian problem is relevant to understand the nature of the February Revolution, even though peasants were not directly involved in the actual revolution and led to the downfall of the autocracy. The defeat of Russia in the Crimean War had exposed the weakness of the Russian state and created the need for reforms. However, the Tsar did not want to undermine the autocracy, power or status, thereby leading only to half-hearted reforms that would result in modernization for military purpose. One such reform was the emancipation of the serfs in 1861, by which peasants became an independent holder of his allotment of land. The Russian presently had been long suffering under the conditions of serfdom, under which they performed unfair labor to maintain the landlords in the service of the Tsar. However, 18th century majority of the peasants were reduced to a state of slavery combined with heavy taxation and the legislation of 1762 that freed the nobility from obligations. This led to several peasants' uprisings and revolts in country. Numerous peasants' insurgencies occurred in the Russian countryside between 1828 and 1854. The Russian serfs comprised 90% of the total population. It was essential for the economic welfare of the country that the serfs should be freed, because servile labor was bound to be inefficient and serfdom had long outlived its utility. The Tsar felt that in the circumstances it was better it should be affected from above than below. As the proverb ran, the serf's body belongs to the Tsar, his soul to God, and his back to his Lord. The emancipation of serfs became a pressing concern due to three main factors. Serfdom was a great menace to established order. Industrial or capitalist development was impossible in Russia without the abolition of serfdom, as industrialization in its initial stage required a large supply of cheap labor, and this supply could not be ensured if millions of Russians were tied to the land. There was also a growing popular feeling in Russia in favor of the abolition of serfdom based on moral grounds. Most of the educated Russians wanted the abolition of this institution. The Russian serfs can be classified into three categories. Category 1, there were 23 million serfs on the crown domains. In category 2, over 3 million in private services, and in category 3, 23 million working on the estates of nobility. The state had a right to do as it pleased with its own serfs. Similarly, those in domestic service could be easily freed, as no land question was involved. The real difficulty was posed by the serfs of the third category, for the merely given them freedom without land would mean creating a huge landless proletariat, which means the workers, which could lead to a social revolution or to law and order problems. After an inquiry, the Edict of Emancipation was issued on 3rd March 1861. This liberation was based on two main principles. 1. Serfs were declared free and liberated from bondage of their masters. Second, it was decided to provide the liberated serfs with adequate means of livelihood. Every serf was granted the cottage in which he lived and the adjoining plot of land so he might cultivate food for the family. However, this did not bring about any significant change in the condition of the peasantry. The amount of land available to them was less than what they had tilled for their own substance under serfdom. Peasants also had to be paid to the government over a period of 49 years, since the dues carried interest liabilities and the financial burden on the peasants increased. The peasant lost all right to use of common lands like forest and pasture lands. Moreover, the increasing population increased pressures on the land, making subsistence really difficult. It thus enhanced the value of land. So, there was a greater yield of taxation. So long as labor had been tied to the soil, it could not be employed in the factory. And so, the industrialization of Russia could only begin after emancipation. As plot of lands were not sufficient enough, number of peasants went in factories for work as daily laborers, and thus the gradual urbanization of Russia in the latter half of the 19th century was partially the consequence of the emancipation of serfs. The peasants also did not have any personal freedom. This was because the land was held not by them but by the village commune, which was based on the notion of collective identity. The peasant was not allowed to leave his land without the authority of the community, and all households will jointly labor for taxes and redemption dues. Thus, the peasants' sense of justice was offended. A sense of more outrage prevailed. They saw the 1861 settlement as depriving them of their natural legitimate rights. Rural unrest grew, and incidents of rent and labor stuck and land squeeges from private landowners rose in 1890s and 1900. It played a major part in the revolution of 1905. Because of emancipation, the nobility lost labor force, and a part of their lands, and so agricultural labor became scarce. There was a sense of crisis in agricultural productivity that was characterized by low yields and recurrent harvest failure of the government to deal with it gave rise to voluntary organizations that began providing relief. These proved the incompetence of the Tsarist regime, increasing public interest of the government. In fact, the 1891 famine crisis resulted in the whole of the society in becoming radicalized, politicized. A public sphere and civil society in opposition to the Tsar enlarged. The late 19th century also saw the beginning of the growth of commercialized agriculture in Russia. As a result, some peasants began to propose and others were forced into landlessness, while Marxist historians have tried to show beginnings of class differentiation on account of this commercialization. This had been contested by other scholars. However, Russia may have been a peasant economy characterized by inequalities, but class consciousness did not exist at that point of time. There was no basis for a class struggle in Russia, and thus the February Revolution cannot be explained in terms of a social struggle. Commercialization, however, did challenge the local hierarchy at level of village to assemblies. Peasants landed to be radical and wanted to seek a great degree of freedom from the commune. Literacy also weakened the village patriarchies, order by breaking down barriers between the commune and outside world. During the First World War, military troops were mobilized, where they acquired a certain degree of literacy in course of their military training. This exposed them to revolutionary idea and propaganda, and where peasants returned to their village, they took up socialism and tried to break the hierarchy of the local village commune. Russia witnessed the beginning of industrialization by the second half of the 19th century with huge state support. From 1880s itself, the state sponsored an upsurge in heavy industries. This was evident in case of railways, coal and mine industries, encouragement given to foreign investment. However, this rapid economic development along with social repercussions of emancipation gave rise to a range of diverse pressures upon the regime. As the country became more industrialized, inadequacies of the Tsarist rule became increasingly apparent. Industrialization was accompanied by growing political and social instability. Industrialization was restricted and permitted, and Russia renamed a predominantly agricultural country. The factors were after foreign owned, foreign financed and staffed by foreign technical and managerial personnel. Those foreign investors were only concerned with quick profits and not workers. As the working population increased, few major cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow swelled with overcrowding. There was shortage of accommodation, poor working condition and living conditions. Problems like ill health, low wages, long hours of work, victimization of poor, minimal education overwhelmed the workers. The workers in Russia had no representative voice, no means of gaining even minor reforms. Thus, illegal strikes and demonstrations became a common feature and led to the creation of radical left. A trade union movement began in the 1870s. Urban centers saw considerable labor unrest from 1890s onwards. A succession of city-wide strike in St. Petersburg in 1896-97 wrecked the stability of the royal family and autocratic establishment. In reaction to the strikes, reforms were introduced from above. The money which the nobility received as indemnity for the loss of their serfs and land was quickly spent up, and so the power of many members of the nobility was thus curbed. To the peasants, it was a change for the worse. David Thompson has observed that the imperial decree of the emancipation gave the Russian peasants legal freedom without economic freedom. Personal liberty meant little to the peasantry as living conditions had deteriorated, and the amount of land distributed among the former serfs was too small to satisfy their needs. To make matters worse, they had to pay money to the state for the next half a century for the inadequate land. Cochin and Abraham, in their book The Making of Modern Russia, calculated that by 1878 only some 50% of the former serfs had received adequate land endowments. The rest were below subsistence level. The terrible land hunger which surfaced could not be satisfied until the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. Another problem was that the ex-serfs did not receive the land in their own right, but rather the village community or mir was made the actual owner of the land. Thus, taken as a whole, the emancipation did not do much to improve the economic conditions of the Russian peasants. Let's talk about some other reforms of Alexander II. The character of Alexander II's reign was certainly more human and liberal than that of Nicholas I. The survivors of the anti-monarchical Decembrist movement of 1825 were allowed to return to Russia. Many other political offenders too were pardoned. The restrictions imposed upon the Russian universities and the Russian presses were removed, and the Russian intellectuals were also permitted to travel more freely abroad. The whole country was now flooded with utopian schemes of reforms. Tsar Alexander II also adopted the policy of westernization and sought to reform some western reforms in his country, though in half-hearted, hesitating manner. He encouraged trade and commerce and also sought to industrialize Russia. In November 1864, Alexander II issued a decree to reform the existing judicial system in Russia. The main principles of English and French jurisprudence were now introduced to Russia, namely the separation of executive from the judiciary, trial in open courts and with the help of advocates, and also trial by jury in criminal cases. All Russian citizens were declared to be equal in the eyes of law. The religious courts, however, continued to function, and so did the special courts for the liberated serfs who lived largely by their customary laws. The Reform Decree of 1864 also did not abolish the despotic power of the Russian police. A number of changes in military service, the most notable of which was that the obligation of rendering military service to the state was extended from the lower classes to all Russian citizens, and the period of compulsory service in the army was reduced from 25 to 6 years. Alexander II sought to implement educational reforms by founding a large number of primary and secondary schools. The reformatory zeal of Alexander II was half-hearted. It failed to satisfy the majority of the Russian people. The Tsar did not accept the criticism of these reforms lightly and gradually stiffened his attitude towards the people. The plan to modernize the education system was given up. Women's education was discouraged, and even the judicial reform of 1864 were kept in abeyance. The uncertainty between liberalization and reaction drove the Russians into the hands of the extremists. The people were now convinced that reform must hereafter come not from above but from below. Growth of extremist movements in Russia. The failure of the reforms undertaken by Alexander II convinced the Russian people that the Tsar would act only under the pressure of increasing agitation. It was from this frustration of the educated classes that the nihilist movement slowly grew in Russia. The word nihilism means lack of faith in the existing tradition and values of life. The nihilists were extreme rationalists who tested every human institution by reason and would not accept any principle on mere faith, no matter however high that principle might stand in the eyes of contemporaries. Government, religion, marriage and ethics, nothing escaped their criticism. Science alone to them was a subject worth studying. It would be wrong to think that the nihilists were purely negative in their attitude to life. They had a positive program of action and positive ideas about reorganizing the society. As Turgenev had shown in his famous novel Fathers and Sons. The nihilist movement developed in Russia in three distinct stages. In the first stage, during the 1860s, nihilism was confined to political and philosophical speculations. In the 1870s, these nihilistic ideas mixed up with the ideas of Romanticism came to be preached by hundreds of Russian youths among the peasants in the countryside. The reactionaries called themselves Narodniks, which literally means men of the people, and was the activity of its first student supporters who went out from the universities clad as peasants to try to convert villagers to socialism. The peasants, however, often looked upon them with suspicion and did not easily accept their ideas. Sometimes the peasants even handed them over to the local police. The government took alarm and imprisoned hundreds of these Narodniks and even sent many of them to exile. As a result, the nihilist movement was driven underground, and in the 1880s, during its last phase, a tendency towards sometimes the peasants even handed them over to the local police. The government took alarm and imprisoned hundreds of these Narodniks and even sent them, many of them, to exile. As a result, the nihilist movement was driven underground, and in the 1880s, during its last phase, a tendency towards individual terrorism developed in Russia. Attempts were made on the lives of many high-placed Russian officials with bombs, pistols and knives. These attempts came to a climax in 1881 when the Tsar Alexander II himself was assassinated by a terrorist belonging to a secret organization called the People's Will. However, the tide began to turn. The nihilists soon lost their contact with the Russian masses, and the new Tsar Alexander III inaugurated new era of despotism. The failure of the various movements convinced many Russians that if they wanted to bring about a transformation of their society, they must shun the path of individual terrorism and find a new theory and practice of social reconstruction which would involve the masses. Tsar Alexander III from 1884 to 1994. Tsar Alexander III 1884 to 1894. Alexander III had no faith in the parliamentary institutions of the Western Europe, which in his opinion were unsuitable for Russia. Autocracy, orthodoxy and Slav nationalism were the three main principles in which he believed, and he was determined to translate these principles into action. Under Alexander III's guidance, a course of repression was adopted towards all those elements which failed to conform to the creed of one Tsar, one Church and one Russia, and which were alien to his three main principles: orthodoxy, autocracy and Slav nationalism. However, Alexander III could not brush aside the forces of discontent from Russia in the long run, for such discontent had only shifted underground for the time being. The economic development of Russia, particularly industrialization, gained a new momentum in the reign of Alexander III. He encouraged the development of railways, mining and financial institutions in Russia. To quicken the pace of industrial progress, he also sought foreign collaboration and foreign loans. Now, we will be speaking about the revolution of 1905. The reign of Alexander III saw a severe course of repression towards all those elements which were alien to the principle of orthodoxy, autocracy and Slav nationalism. Revolutionaries were exiled, the press and the universities were muzzled, a policy of Russification was adopted towards the non-Russian subjects, that are the people from Poland, people from Finland, Jews and Germans and religious other than the Greek Orthodox Church were persecuted. Nicholas II, 1894 to 1917, who succeeded Alexander III, was inclined to mysticism and also subject to malignant influences such as those of his queen, Empress Alexandra and the Siberian monk named Rasputin. He came to the throne at the age of 26 after the death of his father Alexander III. He was not, however, fit to sit on the Russian throne at this hour of crisis. For nearly 18 years, from 1894 to 1905, he continued his father's repressive policies with any variation except towards greater severity. Both reactionary officials, Plehve and Povednostev, remained in power. Plehve, the head of the secret police, was promoted to the rank of Minister of the Interior with almost dictatorial powers. The police were authorized to arrest any person they suspected and to inflict any punishment they liked. University teachers and students were constantly watched by the police, and the censorship of the press became more vigorous than before. The Industrial Revolution, which had begun in Russia in the reign of Alexander III, was in full swing by the reign of Nicholas II. The industrialization of Russia in the long run weakened the autocratic reign. It revolutionized the traditional social fabric and gave birth to two important classes, a middle class and a numerous working class, both of which provided a fertile soil for the seeds of revolution. The industrial workers were naturally attracted to the more radical creed of socialism. The political philosophy of the rising middle class, which had long been prevented from entering into Russia, now spread all over the country. it found manifestation in the formation of organizations like Union of Liberations 1903 and the Constitutional Democratic Party 1905. The Constitutional Democratic Party included within its fold different types of constitutionalists, including the constitutional monarchists and republicans. The discontent of the peasants and the workers, which was much more widespread and deeply rooted than the middle class. This discontent sought expression through different channels. While Russia was being rapidly industrialized, no attempt was made to change the old social institutions and values. At a time when in other European countries the labor movement was acknowledged, the Russian workers were not allowed to form trade unions or any other organizations. Consequently, their discontent found expression through revolutionary channels. Secret radical groups sprang up and working class agitation under the influence of Marxism came to the surface. In the 1860s, Bakunin had translated the Communist Manifesto into Russian, and in 1872 there appeared a Russian translation of the first part of Das Kapital. In 1883, a group called Emancipation of Labor was formed under the leadership of Georgy Plekhanov. It gave its main attention to the working class and was prepared to cooperate even with the middle class. In 1879, the socialist group united under the Social Democratic Workers' Party. Initially, this party did not have much influence, and in 1903, it split into two groups, Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, over the question of methods and tactics. Nevertheless, they worked together till 1912. The discontent of Russia's massive agrarian population found expression through a mass organization called the Socialist Revolutionary Party. Their program, it had been said, disclosed an effort to link up populism with Marxism and Henry George. Its slogan was "the whole land to the whole people." Thus, it appealed to the peasants and to their appetite for land. By 1904, there were already four main sources of active opposition to the autocratic regime. 1. The discontent subject nationalities represented by the policy of Russification. 2. The land-hungry peasants. 3. The bourgeois liberals. And 4. The class-conscious industrial proletariat. Added to this was the humiliating defeat of Russia in Russo-Japanese War 1905. It served as the immediate stimulant for the rising of 1905 revolution. Sporadic peasants' disturbance kept rural society in a state of tension, and the socialist revolutionaries resumed the terrorist tactics of the nihilist leaders, restoring to the massacre of the high official of the Tsarist government. I'll repeat. Resumed the terrorist tactics of the nihilist leaders, resorting to the massacre of the high officials of the Tsarist government. In July 1904, Plehve was assassinated by a socialist revolutionary. The final spark came on 22nd July 1905 when the police opened fire own a possession of about 1,50,000 striking workers who under Father Gapon's leadership were peacefully marching towards the Winter Palace in the St. Petersburg to present a petition to the Tsar. The shooting were a political error and at the end of it remembered as so-called Bloody Sunday. There were perhaps 1,000 dead and many more thousands wounded, earning the Tsar the nickname of Bloody Nicholas. Meanwhile, a series of peasant uprisings in the countryside continued to threaten the landlords. In June 1905, there was a mutiny on the Russian battleship Potemkin and a strike by the flue workers in the port Odessa. All these events culminated in the general strike of October 1905. This strike was a spontaneous rising which was not controlled by any central organization. Everywhere the people demanded a constituent assembly elected by universal male suffrage. Failure of the revolution of 1905. The attempt to overthrow the Tsarist government by paralyzing the social and economic life of the country, however, ended in failure. Perhaps because it was premature. However, the movement was not completely unsuccessful because it compelled Nicholas II to revise his policy to some extent. The Tsar issued two imperial decrees in October and November 1905, which included guarantee of civil liberty, male suffrage for the Duma elections, and a promise that no law could be passed without the approval of the Duma, the Russian parliament. Furthermore, Nicholas also dismissed some of his reactionary officials. These two decrees of October and November virtually transformed the empire of the Romanovs into a constitutional monarchy, though for a short while. Several explanations for the failure of the revolution of 1905 have been offered. First, Nicholas II enjoyed the support of a vast military machine which integrated to his side. Most faithful of all were the Cossacks, who formed a special Rough Rider contingent in the Russian army. Moreover, the end of the Russo-Japanese War also enabled the Tsar to mobilize his forces against the revolutionaries. As Russia was a vast country with poor means of communication, it was difficult for the revolutionaries to organize their forces effectively. There was no central revolutionary organization to direct the movement, and so, in effect, it was a series of sporadic uprisings without effective leadership. Third, foreigners generally hailed the uprising against Tsarism with enthusiasm, but not so foreign government. Both Republican France and Imperial Germany extended help to the tottering autocracy, the former with money and the latter by arresting the fleeing rebels from Russia. Fourth, there developed internal conflicts among the revolutionaries. The Bolsheviks quarrels with Mensheviks, and both of them were opposed to the socialist revolutionaries. The middle classes hated the autocracy, but they hated still more the possibility of losing their property. Hence, many of them joined the side of Tsar when the revolution was only half accomplished. Naturally, the radical groups lost their faith in the middle class liberals. The latter again were divided into a number of factions like the Cadets, the Octoberists, and so on. The greatest outcome of the revolution was the moral downfall of the autocracy. A positive gain was an elected parliament which gave us taste of constitutional rule, even if only a faint degree. In this sense, though the Russian Revolution of 1905 was a failure, it was the first great step in the political education of the Russian masses that in 1917 to wipe out the Tsarist regime under the leadership of V.I. Lenin. Now, we will speak about the Russian Revolution of 1917. In Russia, there were two revolutions. First, the political revolution of March 1917, which sealed the fate of Tsarist autocracy, and second, the socio-economic revolution of November 1917, which brought the Bolshevik into power and established the first communist state in the world. The revolutions are still known in Russia as the February and October revolutions. This is because the Russians were still using the old Julian calendar, which was 13 days behind the Georgian calendar used by the rest of Europe. Russia adopted the Georgian calendar in 1918. The events which the Russians known as the February Revolution began on 23rd February 1917 according to Julian calendar, which was 8th March outside Russia. When the Bolsheviks took power on the 25th October, again according to their Julian calendar, it was 7th November elsewhere. The roots of the Russian Revolution were firmly embedded in the social, economic and political structure of Russia. Despite the events of 1905, the period between 1907 and 12 witnessed some economic prosperity in Russia. However, the Russian government during this period returns to its pre-revolutionary character and power was held by the existing ruling classes. The rise of the kulaks and constituted only a small minority of the peasantry inflicted a new kind of hardships on the poorer peasants. The bulk of the peasantry was now reduced to the status of ordinary day laborers or landless wage earners. In short, there was a great tension and restlessness in Russian agrarian society on the eve of the Bolshevik Revolution. Russia was going through to the earliest phase of her industrial revolution, and the rise of the factory system brought along many associated hardships for the working class. The number of strikes continued to rise between 1905 and 1914, and the increasing working class agitation in Russia mirrored the growing discontent of Russian society more widely. The gulf between the rich and the poor was widening. There was a small middle class who was very feeble, and there was a lack of education among the majority of Russians. The Bolsheviks took an active role to reform the society and bring political consciousness among the people. The period from 1907 to 12 was, generally speaking, a period of economic prosperity for Russia, but the Russian government during this period again got back its pre-revolutionary character and power was captured by the existing ruling class. Pyotr Stolypin, who enjoyed the full confidence of the Tsar till his assassination in September 1911, encouraged the rich peasants and kulaks to squeeze out the poorer peasants from the soil. Considerable holdings belonging to the state and to the imperial family were put up for the sale to these kulaks or big peasants. Stolypin persecuted the revolutionaries, imprisoned or banished political suspects, oppressed the Jewish people living in the Russian Empire, and sponsored new legislation against the people of Poland. It was not until the First World War that the Russian people got another opportunity to challenge the autocratic Tsarist regime. At first, the war triggered a great outburst of patriotic feeling in Russia and served as a unifying force in politics. However, as the news of Russian defeat came in quick succession, the angered public began to blame the incompetence and corruption of the Tsarist regime. The common people, particularly in the towns, faced difficulties in obtaining food and fuel. Inflation became rampant, and the government remained largely indifferent to the people's sufferings. Popular disaffection began to spread more widely during the winter of 1916-17, particularly on account of the chronic food shortages. In December 1916, Rasputin, who was regarded as an evil advisor of the Tsar, was assassinated. The subject nationalities became restless. The middle class began to grumble, and there were riots by peasants in the countryside and strikes by individual workers in the towns. Simultaneously, just as the philosophers prepared the French mentally for the French Revolution, the Russian writer and philosophers too played a significant role in the Russian Revolution. Writers and thinkers like Turgenev, Gorky, Tolstoy, Bakunin and Karl Marx infused new ideas into the minds of the Russians, and such ideas helped to generate a deep hatred for the Tsarist regime among the common people. The March Revolution of 1917. The March Revolution was neither premeditated nor carefully organized and was the result of an almost spontaneous popular reaction against military defeat and economic crisis. The cry of bread was followed by the cries of down with the war and down with autocracy. On 8th March 1917, the industrial worker of Petrograd went on a strike demanding higher wages. They were joined by students on the following day, and on the third day the strike became universal. Even the police forces were overpowered in some parts of the city. The revolution was finally precipitated by the Tsar's decree of 11th March 1917, which asked the striking workers to go back to work. The workers refused to obey the decree and won over to their side some of the soldiers whom the Tsar had sent to suppress them. The minister of the Tsar fled. The crowd seized the armory in St. Petersburg, distributed the weapons among the common people and set fire to the police station. Shortly after this, striking workers and many of the soldiers from a Soviet or Revolutionary Council. Tsar Nicholas II was forced by the army to abdicate, and the monarchy was abolished in the favor of provincial government led by Prince George Lvov. The Petrograd Soviet, together with the Duma, decided to set up the provincial government. The provincial government released thousands of political prisoners and allowed the return of the political exiles to Russia. It proclaimed freedom of association, freedom of press, and freedom of religion. It declared that in a national constituent assembly would shortly be elected on the basis of universal male suffrage. to draw the future constitution of Russia. So, the March Revolution placed political power in the hands of the liberal elements among the bourgeoisie. The provincial government was weak and it failed to solve the problems which had topped the centuries-old structure of Tsarist autocracy. Now, the October Revolution of 1917. The war-weary soldiers and the peasantry did not want war, and Bolsheviks were persistent in their advocacy for peace. Second, the provincial government could not solve the problems of distribution of lands among peasants. Third, the provincial government failed to satisfy the industrialist proletariat. Thus, Russian society contained all the explosive elements needed for a social upheaval: war-weary soldiers, clamorous peasants, and the dissatisfied proletariat. These chaotic elements were united and forged into a mighty political instrument by the Bolsheviks. In July 1917, Prince Lvov was replaced by a socialist revolutionary, Alexander Kerensky, at the head of the provincial government. But the partial reforms that failed to satisfy the Bolsheviks. When the February Revolution broke out, the leader of the Bolsheviks, Lenin, was in Switzerland. He arrived in Russia in April 1917. He was followed by Trotsky. They did not want a parliamentary republic nor a bourgeois democracy, but rather they wanted a Soviet of workers, soldiers, and laborers. Lenin utilized it for the purpose of establishing on the ruins of Tsarist autocracy the dictatorship of the proletariat. The Bolsheviks also demanded termination of the war at any cost so that radical changes might be carried out within Russia. In September 1917, the Moscow and the St. Petersburg Soviets were captured by the Bolsheviks. Increasing economic difficulties weakened the provincial government. In November 1917, the provincial government under Kerensky was thrown out and its leaders fled abroad. The Bolsheviks captured political power under the leadership of Lenin. This was the famous Bolshevik Revolution of October 1917. The easy victory achieved by the Bolsheviks in wresting state power from the hands of their adversaries was followed by a struggle which involved the nation in a civil and interpersonal war. The dispossessed classes passively accept the verdict of the October Revolution, and with the support of Allied power, they organized armed resistance under General Denikin in the south and Admiral Kolchak in Siberia. There were several reprisals and atrocities, but the new Soviet government was ultimately able to consolidate its authority. In foreign policy, the first important step taken by the new government was to withdraw from the war and accept the terms dictated by Germany through the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk on 3rd March 1918. At home, the large estates were confiscated and the peasantry was finally won over, a workers' and peasants' state established in Russia. Now, let us talk about the significance of the Russian Revolution. The importance of this revolution is no less than the French Revolution of 1789. The impact of the French Revolution was confined to Europe, but the influence of the Bolshevik Revolution was global. It encouraged the downtrodden and suffering people of the world to combine and fight for freedom. The Russian Revolution of 1917 far-reaching social, economic and political changes in Russia. The Russian Revolution of 1917 brought about far-reaching social, economic and political changes in Russia. It led to the birth of the USSR, or the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic. For the first time in the history of the world, a socialist state was created. Production and distribution were hereafter controlled by the state. Private ownership of the means of production and private profit making were no more allowed. Land was taken away from the landlords and distributed among the peasants. In time, the Bolshevik Revolution came to exert a far-reaching global impact. Germany, Italy, England, France, Eastern Europe, Asia and Latin America were influenced indirectly by the Bolshevik Revolution, although the degree of influence varied from place to place. The affairs of the Soviet Union were keenly observed by the rest of the world, as it was the first implementation of the philosophy preached by Karl Marx. Under the forceful impact of Marxism, Leninism, communist parties were founded in different parts of the world. Through the Comintern, the Russian Revolution helped to strengthen the anti-colonial nationalist movements in different countries of Asia. For example, the Indian nationalist struggle derived great stimulus from the Bolshevik message. This great upheaval left a permanent imprint on the future course of world history. In a long-term sense, it indirectly contributed to the growth of the fascism in Europe and the beginning of the Cold War between Russia and the United States in the post-Second World War period. Impact of the Russian Revolution. The establishment of the communist state in Russia shook the world. It set up new way of living and thinking. Socialists viewed Marxism as a force for liberating workers from economic exploitation and political oppression. In 1917, notwithstanding the facts that the Russian economy was still agricultural and terribly backward, that Russia's mines and industries were controlled by foreigners, and that the literacy rate was very low. The socialist revolution first came in Russia. The establishment of the Socialist Soviet Republic was seen as a decisive threat to the capitalist world order. Even in the 19th century, the socialists had envisaged a worldwide revolution. The Song of the Socialist International, established in 1889, was the International Unites the Human Race. To Lenin and Trotsky, the main purpose of the revolution in Russia had been to prepare the ground for other revolutions to come. First in the developed capitalist countries of the West, and then in the colonial territories. With a view to promote a world revolution, the Bolsheviks set up the Communist International, or Comintern, in 1919 as a worldwide organization with headquarters in Moscow. All workers' parties around the world were invited as members. Socialist parties in France, Italy, Austria, Norway decided to join it. Lenin's aim for the Comintern was to Bolshevism the main socialist parties and to create a corps of committed socialists who could provide a striking force for a world revolution. The revolution in Russia also encouraged revolutionaries everywhere to dream of freeing their own societies from foreign domination. It provided a model for how to overthrow an oppressive regime as well as pattern for creating a new state that was just and modern. Marx and Lenin became their icons. During the early 1920s, communist parties were set up in China, India, Indonesia, Turkey and many other countries. Lenin also paid considerable attention to the prospect of revolution in the colonial world and promised to support movements against colonial oppression and ethnic domination. Soviet leaders had taken the position that at that stage the communists had to ally with the bourgeoisie in their own countries against the colonial power so that a full-fledged capitalist social system came into being before the working class would successfully challenge the bourgeoisie for power. The emergence of the Soviet Union as a superpower created fear about the spread of communism and also fired the imagination of policy makers everywhere. In the economic field, Soviet practices and achievements made all countries planners. The idea of planning and central direction of the national economy with definite goals emerged from the Soviet Union. The Soviet leaders sought to establish dictatorship of the proletariat in a largely peasant country. Rather than sharing power with the common people, the leaders subjected them to a regimented political life and economically a life of deprivation. The collapse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics had not changed the fact that this revolution profoundly shaped the 20th century. Thank you.